What if our history books are missing entire chapters? Scattered around the globe are objects that defy all logic, relics so advanced or out of place they seem impossible. These are called out-of-place artifacts or OOP arts, and they challenge everything we assume about the past. By the end of this journey, you will discover 25 of these mind-bending items that simply should not exist. We will examine a 2,000-year-old computer and a map that shows a continent it should not know. How many secrets from our past are still waiting to be uncovered? The depths of the sea guard secrets for centuries. In the year 1900, off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, sponge divers stumbled upon a shipwreck from the 1st century before the Common Era. Amid the shattered pottery and statues, they recovered a lump of corroded bronze and wood that seemed unremarkable. It was only years later, when a museum employee noticed a gear wheel embedded in the rock like concretion, that the world realized this was no ordinary artifact. It was the Antikythera mechanism, a device so complex it would rewrite our understanding of ancient technology. This was not a simple clock or calendar. It was an intricate analog computer housing at least 30 interlocking bronze gears precisely machined by hand. When a handle was turned, the entire assembly would whir into motion, calculating the movements of the sun, the moon, and the known planets. It could predict lunar and solar eclipses with stunning accuracy, and it even accounted for the irregular orbit of the moon through a clever system of pin and slot gears. This level of mechanical sophistication would not be seen again for over 1,000 years. So how could such a device exist in the 2nd century before the Common Era? The technology required to design and build it seems completely out of place, a relic from a future that arrived far too early in the past. Theories about its origin are as fascinating as the machine itself. Some historians believe it was the work of a single, unknown genius, perhaps a follower of the great inventor Archimedes, whose legendary lost works might have contained the blueprints for such a device. Others suggest it represents a peak of Hellenistic science that was almost entirely lost, a branch of knowledge that was snuffed out by the chaos of wars and the burning of libraries like the one in Alexandria. Could this mechanism be a lone survivor from a much wider tradition of complex machinery that simply vanished from history? The Antikythera mechanism stands as a silent, ticking testament to the fact that our ancestors were far more advanced than we often give them credit for. While the Greeks were calculating the cosmos with gears, another civilization might have been harnessing a far more subtle power. Decades after the Antikythera mechanism was recovered, a discovery in the deserts of Iraq presented a mystery just as profound. In the ruins of a Parthian village near Baghdad, archaeologists uncovered a simple, unassuming clay jar dating back nearly 2,000 years. Inside this jar was a sealed copper cylinder, and within that cylinder an iron rod. The whole assembly was held in place with an asphalt plug. To most, it looked like a peculiar ancient storage container, perhaps for sacred scrolls. But to one researcher in the 1930s, Wilhelm Koenig, it looked like something else entirely. He proposed a startling theory. If the jar were filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, the entire setup would function as a primitive battery, generating a small but measurable electric current. The chemical reaction between the acidic electrolyte, the iron rod, and the copper cylinder would create a voltage, a genuine electrical cell. The implications of this are staggering. Could the Parthians, or perhaps the later Sasanians who also occupied the region, have understood the basic principles of electricity centuries before figures like Galvani or Volta gave it a name? The so-called Baghdad battery produces just over 1 volt of electricity, not enough to power any device, but proponents of the battery theory suggest a brilliant application: electroplating. This is the process of using an electric current to bind a thin layer of a precious metal like gold onto the surface of a less valuable object such as silver. There are indeed artifacts from the same period and region that show fine gold plating, and while other chemical plating methods were known, electroplating would have been a remarkably efficient and clean way to achieve this effect. A handful of these jars linked together in a series could have produced enough voltage to make the process work, yet the debate is far from settled. Skeptics offer a compelling counter-argument. They point out that no wires or conductors were found with the jars, nor is there any textual or pictorial evidence from the era that describes such a technology. The asphalt seal, they argue, is a perfectly logical way to preserve scrolls from moisture, with the central iron rod simply being the decaying core of a long-vanished parchment. The truth is, we may never know for certain if the Baghdad battery was a power source or a parchment holder. This is the core of the out-of-place artifact mystery. We are left with an object that fits perfectly within a mundane explanation, yet also aligns just enough with a revolutionary one to keep the question alive. It forces us to wonder if a spark of technological insight, one that should have been lost to time, flickered briefly in the ancient world. A world away from mechanical gears and chemical cells, another artifact presents a mystery of pure information. Deep within the vaults of Yale University's Bainach Library rests a book that has openly defied understanding for centuries. Known as the Voynich manuscript, it is a 240-page codex written entirely in a script that no one on Earth can read. Its vellum pages are filled with looping, unknown characters flowing from right to left, accompanied by illustrations that are somehow even more baffling than the text. There are drawings of plants that do not match any known species, their roots and leaves arranged in impossible configurations. Circular charts map out celestial bodies in unfamiliar constellations, and perhaps most strangely, there are pages filled with intricate diagrams of what appear to be biological systems, showing tiny, naked women bathing in or connected by a complex network of green, fluid-filled tubes. The manuscript radiates a sense of purposeful meaning that remains just beyond our grasp. It is not random scribbles. The text follows distinct linguistic patterns, with words and sentence structures that suggest a real, constructed language. This very coherence is what makes its undecipherable nature so maddening for cryptographers and linguists. Over the decades, everyone from brilliant code breakers who tackled military ciphers to sophisticated artificial intelligence programs has tried to crack the Voynich code. All have failed. The manuscript laughs in the face of every attempted solution, from simple substitution ciphers to complex lost languages. This relentless defiance has naturally spawned countless theories about its origin. The most skeptical view is that it is an elaborate and brilliant Renaissance hoax crafted to dupe a wealthy patron. A clever forger could have invented a plausible-looking nonsense script and filled a book with fanciful images to sell as a rare, mystical text. Yet, this explanation struggles with the manuscript's internal consistency, the statistical properties of its text that so closely mimic a real language. If it is a hoax, it is a work of unparalleled cryptographic genius in its own right. Other theories venture into far more speculative territory. Could it be the sole surviving book from a lost culture, its language and knowledge entirely erased from history? Some even point to the otherworldly plants and cosmic charts, wondering if its origins are not of this earth at all. The Voynich manuscript is a different kind of out-of-place artifact. It is not a machine that seems too advanced, but a message that remains stubbornly undelivered. It sits in silence, a beautiful, tantalizing puzzle that holds its secrets tight, challenging us to wonder if we will ever be smart enough to hear what it has to say. A different kind of intelligence might have been taking shape along the Nile. While the Voynich manuscript hides its secrets in unreadable text, a small wooden object from ancient Egypt presents a mystery you can hold in your hand. Discovered in a tomb at Saqqara dating back to around 200 years before the Common Era, this artifact is known simply as the Saqqara bird, At first glance, it looks like a stylized bird figurine, a common funerary offering. But a closer look reveals features that are anything but common. It has sleek, aerofoil-shaped wings that seem designed for lift, and most strikingly, a vertical tail fin, a feature no bird in nature possesses. This tail fin is perfectly perpendicular to the wings, a design element crucial for stability in flight, but utterly superfluous for a simple model of a falcon or dove. This is where the debate ignites. Mainstream Egyptology offers a straightforward interpretation. The object is likely a ceremonial representation of a bird, perhaps a toy for a child in the afterlife or a symbol of religious significance. The vertical tail, they suggest, could be a stylized feather or simply an artistic choice. It is, after all, carved from a single piece of sycamore wood and shows no signs of ever having had a horizontal stabilizer, a key component for an airplane. To these experts, seeing advanced aerodynamics in the Saqqara bird is a classic case of pareidolia, where we see patterns and meanings that are not really there, projecting our modern knowledge onto an ancient culture. Yet, a chorus of voices from the fields of aviation and engineering disagrees. When specialists in aerodynamics examine the Saqqara bird, they see something profoundly different. They point out that the cross-sectional shape of its wings is not a flat slab but is subtly arched, a design that generates lift as air passes over it. That distinctive vertical tail, they argue, is precisely what a scaled-up working model would need to prevent itself from spinning uncontrollably in the air. To test this theory, enthusiasts have built enlarged, weighted replicas of the Saqqara bird. The results are startling. These models do not just fall to the ground. They can actually fly, gliding for considerable distances with grace and stability when launched with a source of thrust. This suggests the original object was not merely a toy, but potentially a scale model of a much larger, functional glider. So we are left with two irreconcilable possibilities. Was the Saqqara bird just a child's plaything, its aerodynamic features a bizarre and incredible coincidence? Or does it represent a glimpse of applied science, a hands-on understanding of flight principles that was discovered, used for some unknown purpose, and then lost for millennia? There are no records of Egyptian pharaohs taking to the skies, no tomb paintings depicting gliders, yet the object itself remains a silent wooden question. It challenges us to decide if we are looking at a simple carving or the ghost of a technology that never was. This small wooden bird from Egypt is not the only artifact that seems to defy its own time. In the summer of 1936, a different kind of discovery was made along the banks of Red Creek in Texas. A couple was walking when they noticed a curious piece of rock with a chunk of wood protruding from its core. They took it home and eventually cracked it open, revealing a modern-looking hammer encased perfectly within the solid stone. This is the London hammer, and its existence presents a geological riddle that is difficult to solve. The hammer itself has a wooden handle and an iron head, a design that would not be out of place in a 19th-century blacksmith shop. The conundrum lies in the rock that entombed it. Geological analysis suggests the stone nodule is a concretion that formed around the object, and the surrounding rock strata date back to the Cretaceous period, a time when dinosaurs still roamed the Earth. This places the hammer's encasement at over 100 million years old, a date that is utterly incompatible with human history as we know it. How could a man-made tool be sealed inside rock that predates humanity by tens of millions of years? The most accepted scientific explanation offers a fascinating, if less dramatic, resolution. Concretions can form surprisingly quickly under the right chemical conditions. It is entirely plausible that the hammer was a tool lost by a miner in the 1800s. Over just a few decades, mineral-rich water could have percolated through the sediment, depositing layers of limestone and other minerals around the metal and wood, cementing it into a hard, rock-like shell. In this scenario, the hammer is not ancient at all. It is a relatively recent object that was fooled into looking ancient by a rapid geological process, and the ancient date attributed to the rock refers to the age of the sedimentary particles, not the date the concretion formed around the hammer. Yet, for those who champion the hammer as a true out-of-place artifact, this explanation feels insufficient. They point to tests that suggested the iron of the hammer head was unusually pure, lacking the bubbles and impurities typical of 19th century smithing, though these claims are heavily debated. This has opened the door for more extraordinary theories. Could the hammer be evidence of a completely unknown, advanced prehistoric civilization that existed alongside the dinosaurs? Or does its impossible placement point to something even stranger, like a momentary rift in time that dropped a modern tool into the distant past where geology then swallowed it whole? The London hammer forces us to confront the reliability of our own methods. It is a test of our interpretation. Do we trust the established timelines of geology and human evolution, or do we allow a single, perplexing object to challenge the entire framework? It sits at the crossroads of a solved mystery and an open question, a reminder that sometimes the story told by the rock is not as simple as it seems. Another tool seemingly imprisoned by stone emerged from the mountains of California. In 1961, a group of rockhounds were searching for geodes near the town of Olancha. They cracked open what they believed was a promising nodule, expecting to find beautiful crystals inside. Instead, they discovered a mechanical object. It appeared to be a spark plug encased within a hard, shell-like layer of rock. This was the Koso artifact, and its proponents claimed the surrounding geode was an astonishing 500,000 years old. The object itself was metallic, and an X-ray analysis revealed a detailed internal structure. At its center was a ceramic ring, and within that, a 2-millimeter thick metal rod. The entire assembly was held within a hexagonal casing, looking uncannily like a modern spark plug. If the dating was correct, this machine-made component existed long before humans even learned to smelt metal. The mystery seemed absolute. How could a piece of 20th century technology be sealed inside a stone that formed in the Pleistocene epoch? The implications were staggering, pointing toward ancient advanced civilizations or even visitors from other worlds. Yet, as with the London hammer, the true story of the Koso artifact lies in the details of its formation. Geologists and skeptics stepped forward with a more grounded but no less fascinating explanation. They argued that the object was not inside a true geode, which forms over immense timescales, but rather a concretion. This is a hard, mineral-laden lump that can form relatively quickly around a foreign object, especially in water-rich environments. The mineral composition was identified as a common iron oxide clay, not the slow-growing quartz of a classic geode. The timeline then collapses from 500,000 years to perhaps a few decades. The spark plug was almost certainly a genuine champion brand plug from the 1920s, common in the Model T and other early automobiles. Prospectors and miners used such vehicles extensively in the Koso Mountains. A spark plug lost or discarded on the ground could have easily rolled into a spring or a damp area. There, the unique local minerals began to accrete around it, hardening into a convincing stone shell within a human lifetime. The X-ray, while revealing a complex internal shape, did nothing to prove an impossible age. It simply confirmed that the object was, as it appeared, a spark plug. This case becomes a masterclass in distinguishing a genuine historical puzzle from a modern object misunderstood. The Koso artifact does not defy our timeline, it reinforces our understanding of geological processes. It shows how quickly nature can create a convincing illusion of great antiquity, wrapping the mundane in a shroud of mystery. This forces us to ask a more subtle question. When we are so eager to find evidence of the impossible, are we sometimes fooled by the ordinary magic of the natural world? The story of the Koso artifact reminds us that nature can craft convincing deceptions, but some mysteries are born not from geology but from pure, unverified narrative. High in the mountains bordering China and Tibet, a tale emerged in the 1930s that would become a legend among out-of-place artifact enthusiasts, the story of the Dropa stones. According to the account, a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pu-te discovered a series of caves buried deep within the Bayan-Karaula range. Inside, he and his team made two bizarre finds. The first was a collection of skeletons, small in stature but with strangely oversized, elongated skulls. The second, and far more puzzling, was a cache of hundreds of stone discs, each with a hole in its center, resembling primitive records or phonograph discs. These stones, it was said, were impossibly old, dating back approximately 12,000 years. The real mystery, however, was etched into their surfaces. A tiny, spiral groove ran from the center to the outer edge, and upon closer inspection, this groove was not a decorative pattern, but a continuous line of unknown hieroglyphic writing. The story claims that decades later, a researcher managed to decipher the script. The translation told a tragic and incredible tale. It described a spacecraft from a distant star that crashed in the remote mountains. The survivors, a people who called themselves the Dropa, were unable to repair their vessel and found themselves stranded on Earth. The inscriptions were their lament, a permanent record of their doomed exile far from home. This narrative presents the ultimate out-of-place artifact scenario, an object that is not just technologically anomalous, but one that carries a message confirming ancient extraterrestrial contact. The elongated skeletons found nearby seem to provide the physical proof, the remains of the star travelers themselves. It is a story that effortlessly captures the imagination, weaving together archaeology, paleontology, and science fiction into a single, compelling myth. Yet, when subjected to the rigors of historical and scientific scrutiny, the entire edifice begins to crumble. No reputable institution has ever been able to examine these stones. The original archaeologist, Kai Pu-te, appears in no official records of Chinese archaeological expeditions. The discs themselves have never been photographed in a verifiable context, and no physical sample has been made available for modern dating techniques. The supposed translator of the script remains a shadowy figure, and his groundbreaking translation has never been peer-reviewed or published in any academic journal. The entire story was first popularized in a German author's book of speculative nonfiction, and many researchers now trace its origins to a possible misinterpretation of a news article about ordinary ancient Chinese Bai discs, which are ceremonial jade stones with a center hole but no spiraling hieroglyphs. The overwhelming consensus among academics is that the Dropa stones are a classic modern myth, an elaborate hoax born from a mixture of misidentification, creative storytelling, and a deep human desire to find evidence that we are not alone. So are the Dropa stones a profound secret of our past, or simply a cautionary tale? They stand as a powerful reminder that for every genuine historical puzzle, there are countless stories that sound perfect but vanish into thin air the moment you try to hold them in your hand. But not every impossible object is hidden in a cave or locked in a museum vault. Some of the most compelling mysteries are drawn in plain sight. In the year 1929, during the renovation of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, a map was discovered that would send shockwaves through the world of historical cartography. It was drawn on gazelle skin by an Ottoman admiral and cartographer named Piri Reis in the year 1513. At first glance, it is a remarkable document of its time, showing the coastlines of Western Europe, North Africa, and the eastern shores of South America with surprising, though not perfect, accuracy. The map even includes a note from the admiral himself, stating he had used many source maps to compile his work, including some that dated back to the time of Alexander the Great. It was a fascinating historical find, but its true controversy lay in a small, seemingly insignificant detail at its southern edge. There, a landmass is depicted, connected to South America but curving eastward in a way that is hauntingly familiar. To many modern observers, it looks unmistakably like the coast of Antarctica, specifically Queen Maud Land, a continent that would not be officially discovered by European explorers for another 300 years. This is not just a rough shape. The map shows a land free of ice with rivers, mountains, and a detailed, accurate coastline that lies hidden today under miles of glacial ice. The implications are staggering. How could a 16th century mapmaker have known the true geography of a continent buried under an ice sheet for millions of years? The most provocative theory suggests that Piri Reis was telling the truth about his ancient sources. Proponents of this idea argue that his map is a copy of a copy, tracing its lineage back to a hyper-advanced global seafaring civilization that existed thousands of years before the rise of Egypt or Sumer. This lost culture, perhaps the legendary civilization of Atlantis, would have possessed the technology and knowledge to map the entire globe, including an ice-free Antarctica at a time when its coasts were actually clear, a period that ended roughly 6,000 years ago. According to this view, the Piri Reis map is not a product of 16th century guesswork, but a faded photocopy of a prehistoric world map, a surviving fragment of a lost epoch's genius. Yet there is a powerful and rational counter-argument that challenges this extraordinary claim. Skeptical historians and cartographers point out that the map is filled with the errors and misconceptions typical of its era. The Caribbean is distorted, and the map completely omits the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. They argue that the mysterious southern land is far more likely to be a speculative addition, a common practice among mapmakers of the time who would fill blank spaces with hypothetical continents. It could represent a mangled version of a yet undiscovered South America, or even the fabled Terra Australis, a theoretical great southern continent that geographers had hypothesized about for centuries. The striking resemblance to Antarctica's subglacial coast, they argue, is a classic case of apophenia where we connect random dots to form a pattern we want to see. The map does not actually label the land as Antarctica, and its placement is geographically problematic, so we are left with a profound choice between two narratives. Do we see the Piri Reis map as a miraculous window into a forgotten age of exploration, a tangible piece of evidence for a civilization that mastered the world's oceans? Or is it a beautiful and ambitious but ultimately flawed product of its own time, a reflection of the limits of 16th century knowledge mixed with the boundless imagination of a master cartographer? The map does not give up its secrets easily. It hangs in the balance, a silent testament to the enduring human desire to chart the unknown, and a permanent question mark on the true extent of our ancient past. High on the arid plains of southern Peru, a sprawling canvas of desert floor holds one of archaeology's most visually stunning mysteries. Etched into the dark, rocky surface are the Nazca lines, hundreds of gigantic geoglyphs stretching for miles across the plateau. From the ground, they are little more than shallow trenches, scraped paths of lighter-colored subsoil exposed against the dark pebbles. Their scale and precision are completely invisible, a secret kept from any human standing among them. But rise just a few hundred feet into the air, and the entire landscape transforms. A colossal hummingbird with wings outstretched and a long, delicate beak emerges from the earth. A massive spider, a monkey with an intricately coiled tail, a whale, and even a strange humanoid figure nicknamed the astronaut all become perfectly clear. These are not rough sketches. The lines that form them are perfectly straight for miles, and the curves of the animal figures are executed with a geometric precision that seems impossible for a culture that lived over 2,000 years ago without any means of flight. This is the core of the enigma. The Nazca people created a monumental art gallery intended for a viewpoint they could never naturally achieve. So why would they invest such immense effort into designs they could never fully see? The most widely accepted theory connects the lines to the heavens. Researchers have noted that many of the long, straight lines align with celestial events, pointing to the spot on the horizon where the sun rises during the summer solstice or where certain important stars would have appeared. In this view, the lines were a giant astronomical calendar, a sacred landscape used to track the seasons and predict the rains essential for survival in the harsh desert. The animal figures may have represented constellations or deities associated with water and fertility. The act of walking these pathways could have been a deeply spiritual ritual, a way for the Nazca to commune with their gods by physically traversing a map of the cosmos laid out upon the earth. Another compelling idea suggests the lines were part of an elaborate pilgrimage route. Different clans or families may have been responsible for specific geoglyphs, walking them during ceremonial processions to maintain social bonds and honor ancestral spirits. The sheer scale of the work would have required a coordinated, long-term community effort, making the creation of the lines as important a social ritual as their eventual use. But there is a theory that pushes far beyond the earthly and into the cosmic. In the mid-20th century, some authors looked at the long, perfectly straight runways and the intricate, almost technical drawings and proposed a radical idea. They suggested the Nazca lines were not calendars or walkways, but landing strips and navigation markers for ancient astronauts. From this perspective, the giant figures were beacons visible only from the air, meant to guide extraterrestrial spacecraft. The astronaut figure carved on a hillside was interpreted as a literal representation of these star visitors. This ancient astronaut theory asks us to consider a breathtaking possibility. Could the Nazca people have been creating these massive signs at the direct request of, or in homage to, beings who observed them from the sky? While mainstream archaeology dismisses this for a lack of any supporting evidence, the theory persists because it directly addresses the most perplexing aspect of the lines, their need for an aerial viewer. The Nazca Plateau does not give up its secrets easily. With no written records from the culture that created them, the lines remain a silent, sprawling question. Were they a profound expression of faith, a complex scientific instrument, or something else entirely? They force us to look down from the skies and wonder what drove an ancient people to turn their entire world into a message we are still struggling to read. Deep in the river valleys of Peru, another collection of stones tells a story that seems ripped from science fiction. The Ica stones are thousands of andesite rocks, carved with intricate scenes that defy any conventional history. One moment you are looking at a familiar image of a fish or a flower, and the next your mind struggles to process a human figure locked in combat with a triceratops. Other stones depict surgeons performing what looks like a heart transplant, using detailed medical instruments. There are charts of the cosmos showing planets and stars with an accuracy that should have been impossible for the ancient cultures of the region. The sheer volume and consistency of these carvings present a breathtaking narrative, one where humans and dinosaurs coexisted and where advanced medical knowledge was already in practice. How could such a thing be possible? The mystery took a dramatic turn when the main source of the stones, a farmer named Basilio Ashuya, made a stunning confession. He admitted that he and his family had carved the stones themselves, using a dental drill and then aging them by baking them in cow dung to create a patina of great age. He explained that he created the fantastic scenes by copying images from comic books, textbooks, and magazines. This confession seemed to slam the door shut on the Ica stones, branding them as nothing more than an elaborate and financially successful hoax aimed at the tourist trade. Yet, even with this admission, the story refuses to die completely. A small group of researchers points to perplexing details that keep a sliver of doubt alive. They argue that the sheer number of stones, estimated to be in the tens of thousands, seems excessive for a simple hoax. Could a single farming family have produced such a massive volume of work? Furthermore, some geologists claim that the dark, desert varnish coating on a few of the stones suggests a much greater age than the few decades since Ashuya's confession. This has led to a fascinating compromise theory. Perhaps the farmer did carve most of the stones, but he may have been inspired by, or even copied, a small number of genuine, ancient artifacts that he had found. In this scenario, the real Ica stones are hidden within the vast sea of forgeries, their true messages lost amidst the modern creations, so we are left with a deeply personal mystery. Do we trust the confession of the man who says he made them all, dismissing the entire collection as a clever fraud? Or do we listen to that nagging voice that wonders if a handful of these rocks carry a genuine, impossible truth? The Ica stones force us to confront a difficult question. When we want to believe in a lost world of giants and dinosaurs, how easily can our desire shape the evidence we see? A single weathered coin can carry the weight of an entire ocean crossing. Buried in the shell heaps of a Native American settlement in Maine, archaeologists unearthed a small silver coin that seemed to rewrite a chapter of history. Known as the Maine penny, it was identified as a Norse coin minted between 1065 and 1080 during the reign of King Olaf Kyrre of Norway. Its discovery at a 12th century site belonging to the Penobscot people was electrifying. Here was tangible proof that the Vikings, legendary explorers of the North Atlantic, had not only reached Newfoundland but had ventured hundreds of miles further south, making contact with native peoples in what is now the United States long before Columbus. The implications were staggering, suggesting a pre-Columbian transoceanic connection far more extensive than anyone had dared to believe. Yet, the story of this coin is far more complex than a simple tale of Vikings landing on a Maine beach. The archaeological context itself presents a puzzle. The coin was found not in a special ceremonial deposit, but amidst everyday refuse, broken tools, and animal bones. It was just one object among thousands, suggesting it was not a treasured relic of a first encounter, but an item that had been integrated into the local economy. This mundane setting is the key to the most widely accepted explanation. The prevailing theory points not to a direct Viking voyage to Maine, but to the vast, intricate trade networks that crisscrossed ancient North America. We know the Norse built a settlement at Elance Ox Meadows in Newfoundland, a base for further exploration. From there, they would have encountered indigenous groups. A Norse coin, a curious and shiny object, could have entered a native trade route as a simple item of barter or a trinket. Over generations, this single piece of silver could have been traded from hand to hand, traveling south from Newfoundland through a long chain of exchanges, moving from tribe to tribe until it finally came to rest in a coastal settlement in Maine, hundreds of miles and perhaps a century removed from its original Norse owner. This theory does not diminish the coin's significance, it merely reframes the narrative. The Maine penny may not be proof of Vikings in Maine, but it stands as powerful evidence of something equally profound: the incredible reach of indigenous trade networks that could transport an object from one world to another. It is a silent witness to a moment when two hemispheres briefly touched, not with the clash of swords, but through the simple, universal language of trade. Another stone, this one unearthed from the roots of a Minnesota poplar tree in 1898, tells a story of Scandinavian explorers in the very heart of North America. The Kensington runestone is a 200-pound slab of greywacke, covered in runic letters that describe a harrowing journey. The inscription, dated to the year 1362, tells of a party of 30 Goths and 22 Norwegians on an exploration voyage from Vinland. It recounts a tragic ambush where 10 men were red with blood and killed, and concludes with a plea to the Virgin Mary to save them from evil. If genuine, this slab of stone would be monumental proof that Norse adventurers penetrated deep into the American continent, reaching Minnesota over a century before Columbus set sail. The evidence put forward by its proponents is compelling. They point to linguistic analysis of the runes themselves, arguing that the script uses a form of Old Swedish that includes specific, archaic character combinations that would have been unknown to a 19th-century forger. They highlight the use of certain numbers and symbols that align with medieval Scandinavian dating methods. The very location of the find, near a network of lakes and rivers that could have served as a natural waterway from Hudson Bay, adds a layer of geographical plausibility to the narrative of an inland expedition. This was not just a rock with scratches on it, it was a detailed, desperate message from the past, yet the academic consensus stands firmly against it. The vast majority of runologists and historians classify the Kensington runestone as a clever and poignant hoax. Their arguments are just as detailed. They note that the runic alphabet used is a bizarre mixture of styles from different centuries and regions, a pastiche that no genuine medieval carver would have created. The language itself, while containing some old forms, is heavily contaminated with modern Swedish and English sentence structure. The specific phraseology, including the mention of the Virgin Mary in a particular context, reads more like the writing of a 19th-century Lutheran farmer than a 14th-century Norse explorer. The most likely scenario is that the stone was carved by a Swedish immigrant named Olof Oman, the very farmer who discovered it. Life for Scandinavian immigrants in late 19th-century America was difficult, and creating a tangible link to a glorious Viking past may have been a powerful act of cultural pride, a way to plant a deep historical root in their new soil. So we are left with a powerful dichotomy. Do we listen to the small group of voices who see in the stone's grooves the ghost of a lost Norse expedition, a tale of courage and tragedy written in stone? Or do we side with the academic establishment, which sees a different, more human story, one of identity and longing etched not in the 14th century but in the 19th? The Kensington runestone is more than just a potential fraud, it is a mirror. It reflects our deep desire to find our own stories written into the ancient landscape, a testament to the fact that sometimes the most compelling mysteries are not about what happened, but about why we so desperately want them to be true. The stone walls of an Egyptian temple hold a carving that seems to illuminate a secret. Deep within the Hathor temple at Dendera, a vast and detailed relief shows a scene that has sparked a modern debate. Within a large, glass-like bulb, a snake stretches the full length of the object, its head pointing toward one end. This serpent is held upright by a pillar, and a cable appears to run from the base of the bulb, connecting to a box that is being gripped by a mysterious, kneeling figure. To many observers, the resemblance is uncanny. It looks exactly like a giant, ancient version of a Crookes tube, an early type of electrical light bulb. The snake represents the glowing filament, the pillar is the support, the box is the power source, and the cable is the wire delivering the current. This interpretation, known as the Dendera light, suggests the ancient Egyptians may have possessed a form of electric lighting, a technology lost for millennia. Proponents of this theory ask a compelling question. How else could the builders of the pyramids and elaborate tombs have illuminated the deep, windowless chambers where their intricate artwork was created? Soot from torches or oil lamps would have blackened the ceilings, yet many of these sacred spaces remain pristine. Could this carving be the answer, a technical diagram for a form of clean, electric light that explains the impossible precision of their underground work? The idea is electrifying, painting a picture of a civilization far more technologically advanced than we ever imagined. Yet, Egyptologists offer a profoundly different and deeply symbolic interpretation. They point to the rich tapestry of Egyptian creation myths. In their view, the scene does not depict a machine, but a moment of divine genesis. The bulb is not a glass enclosure, but a blossoming lotus flower, a powerful symbol of creation and rebirth. The snake emerging from it is not a filament, but a serpent deity representing the god Harsomptus, a form of the young sun god coming into being. The entire scene is a spiritual metaphor showing the moment the sun, the ultimate source of light for the Egyptians, is born from the primordial lotus that rose from the waters of chaos at the dawn of time. The box and cable are not electrical components but a jed pillar, a symbol of stability, and a lotus stem, connecting the divine birth to the earthly realm. This explanation places the relief firmly within the known religious and artistic context of ancient Egypt, where symbolism always took precedence over literal technical diagrams. So we are faced with two irreconcilable visions of the past. Is the Dendera light a literal blueprint for forgotten technology, a secret that explains the impossible cleanliness of the tombs? Or is it a beautiful and complex piece of sacred art, its true meaning not in volts and amps but in myths and gods? The carving does not flicker or fade. It simply waits, challenging us to decide whether we are looking at the world's first light bulb or the eternal light of a creation story. While the Dendera carving presents a symbolic debate, a metal object pulled from the earth offers a physical puzzle. 35 feet deep in the sand of a Romanian riverbank, alongside the undeniable bones of a mastodon, excavators uncovered something that should not have been there. It was a wedge-shaped piece of metal, heavily corroded and clearly man-made. This is the Ayod wedge, and its composition would ignite a firestorm of controversy. Laboratory analysis revealed it was made of an alloy, primarily aluminum, but strengthened with a dozen other metals. This is not the kind of aluminum you find in nature. It is a sophisticated, engineered material that requires an industrial process to create. To produce such an alloy, raw bauxite ore must be smelted at temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, a feat of metallurgy that only became possible in the modern era, with the first commercial aluminum smelting developed in the late 19th century. Yet, this object was found in a layer of earth dated to the Pleistocene epoch, a time when mastodons and mammoths roamed the land, over 10,000 years before the rise of any known civilization. How could a piece of advanced factory-made metal be buried alongside the remains of an Ice Age giant? The most straightforward explanation is that it is a piece of modern machinery, a simple excavator tooth or a drill bit from a mining operation that somehow became mixed in with the ancient bones, perhaps falling from a barge or being driven deep into the sediment during earlier, unrecorded work. Proponents of this view argue that the stratigraphy of archaeological sites can be disturbed by countless factors over centuries, and a single misplaced object does not rewrite history. They see the Ayod wedge as a classic case of an out-of-time object, not an out-of-place one, its true age masked by its accidental context. But those who champion the wedge as a genuine anomaly point to the thick layer of oxide that coated it, a patina that some analyses suggested would have taken far more than a century to form. This has opened the door to more extraordinary theories. Could the wedge be a surviving fragment of a lost, technologically advanced culture from prehistory, a civilization that mastered metallurgy only to vanish without a trace, leaving behind only this one stubborn piece of evidence? Others have looked at its unusual shape and proposed it was a component from a much larger machine, perhaps even a landing foot from a vehicle of unknown origin. The Ayod wedge forces us to confront a stark choice between two narratives. Do we accept the simpler, more probable story of a modern mix-up, trusting our established timelines of human technological progress? Or do we allow this single, silent piece of metal to suggest that our history is far more complex and mysterious than our textbooks dare to admit? It sits in a museum not as a solved case, but as a heavy, metallic question mark hanging over our entire understanding of the ancient world. Buried within a slab of solid rock from Scotland's Kingoody Quarry, a simple iron tool tells a story that geology insists is impossible. In the mid-1800s, as workers were splitting apart a large block of solid Devonian sandstone, they found a common-looking hammerhead embedded deep within it, its wooden handle mostly rotted away but its metal core imprisoned by the stone. The rock layer that encased it was dated to be over 400 million years old, a time when the first primitive plants were just beginning to colonize the land, and complex life existed only in the seas. According to every established timeline, humanity and its tool-making prowess would not emerge for hundreds of millions of years. So how did this hammer come to be sealed inside ancient stone? The immediate and most accepted scientific explanation points directly to the same process that challenged the London hammer, a natural concretion. Sandstone can form concretions, hard, compact masses that build up around a foreign object when mineral-rich water percolates through the sediment. In this scenario, the hammer was not ancient at all. It was a tool lost by a miner or quarry worker in a much more recent century, perhaps the 17th or 18th. Over a relatively short period, maybe just a few decades, minerals could have cemented around it, creating a perfect, solid cast that mimicked the appearance of the surrounding, truly ancient bedrock. When the quarrymen split the stone, they simply broke along the line of this newer, weaker concretion, creating the illusion that the hammer had been inside the primordial rock all along. For mainstream geologists, this case is closed, a clear example of a modern object being misinterpreted due to a rapid and convincing geological process. Yet, the mystery holds a powerful grip on the imagination. Proponents of the hammer's anomalous age point to its specific location, deep within the solid block, arguing that a superficial concretion would have been on the surface, not encased within the stone's core. This single detail keeps the question alive for those who dare to ask it. Could the Kingudi hammer be a fragment from a timeline we have not yet accounted for, evidence of a civilization so lost that not a single bone or building remains, only a single stubborn tool? It stands as a quiet monument to a fundamental conflict, a choice between trusting the vast, slow narrative written in stone layers or listening to the silent, defiant testimony of a single object that begs us to reconsider everything. The quiet darkness of a coal mine can hide objects from a different age entirely. In 1885, at the Wolfsegg coal mine in Austria, workers splitting a large block of tertiary-era coal made a bizarre discovery. Encased within the coal, which was dated to be millions of years old, was a small, heavy cube of iron. This object, which would become known as the Wolfsegg iron or the Salzburg cube, was immediately perplexing. Its edges were sharp and its faces relatively flat, giving it a distinctly geometric, almost manufactured appearance. It was not a random lump of ore, it was a near-perfect cube with a deep groove carved around its center. Here was an object that looked for all the world like a piece of machined metal, yet it had been imprisoned in coal that predated humanity by eons. The immediate and official explanation from experts was swift and firm. They declared it to be a piece of meteoritic iron, a nugget of nickel-rich iron that had fallen from the sky and somehow become embedded in the ancient coal seam. The natural processes of erosion and geological pressure, they argued, could have shaped it into that uncannily regular form. Alternatively, some suggested it was simply a piece of industrial waste, perhaps a fragment of mining equipment from a much later period that had somehow been pushed deep into the coal bed during excavation, creating a false impression of age. Case closed, or so it seemed, but the details of the cube's composition and context kept the mystery alive. Analysis showed it was indeed composed of iron and nickel, consistent with a meteorite. Yet the very shape of the object defies easy explanation. Natural geological forces rarely, if ever, produce such sharp, symmetrical edges and a precise, incised groove. This was not a weathered, rounded pebble from space. It looked like a component, a part that was meant to fit into something else. The groove around its middle suggests a function, a place for a strap or a wire to hold it secure. Could natural processes really account for such a specific and purposeful form? This single object forces us to weigh two competing realities. On one side, we have the overwhelming weight of geological science, which tells us that complex tool-making species simply did not exist during the Tertiary period. The official explanation is the simplest one, that this is a natural formation whose shape is a staggering coincidence. On the other side, we have the object itself, sitting in a museum, its geometric lines silently challenging that very timeline. The wolf's egg iron does not offer any easy answers. It simply asks us whether we trust the story told by the rock layers or the story told by the shape in our hand. The quiet, geometric perfection of the wolf's egg iron finds a strange and ancient echo in the mines of South Africa. Deep within the rock of the Wonderstone silver mine, miners began unearthing strange metallic spheres from a mineral deposit known as pyrophyllite. These objects, now called the Klerksdorp spheres, are small, rarely more than an inch or two in diameter, and are composed of a nickel-steel alloy called pyrite. What makes them truly extraordinary is their age. The layer they were found in is part of the Precambrian era, dating these spheres to an astonishing 2.8 billion years old. That is a time so remote that the only life on Earth was simple, single-celled organisms, billions of years before the first dinosaurs, before fish, before anything with a spine or a brain. In a world of primordial slime, these metallic spheres were already buried in the stone. Their mystery only deepens with their appearance. While many are simple discs or lumpy balls, a number of them are perfectly round. Some even have not one, not two, but three parallel grooves etched around their equator, as if machined by a precision lathe. They look less like random minerals and more like components, tiny ball bearings crafted for a purpose no one can comprehend. The immediate question is unavoidable. How could something that appears so deliberately manufactured exist in a world without toolmakers, without life forms more complex than a bacterium? Geologists have a clear and compelling answer for this apparent impossibility. They identify the spheres as natural formations known as pyrite marbles or concretionary pyrite balls. Pyrite, or fool's gold, can crystallize in a variety of forms, and under specific conditions of heat and pressure, it can form these spherical concretions. The process is a marvel of natural chemistry, where minerals slowly accrete around a central nucleus, layer by layer, sometimes achieving near-perfect spherical shapes. The grooves, they argue, are the result of a different process altogether. As the softer rock around these hard pyrite spheres weathered away over eons, differential erosion could have carved those parallel lines into their surface. The softer material between more resistant crystalline layers wears down, leaving behind the appearance of deliberate grooves. In this view, the Klerksdorp spheres are a beautiful example of nature's artistry, a testament to the incredible, random patterns that geological forces can produce over billions of years. They are not manufactured but mineralogical miracles, yet for those who see the hand of intelligence in these objects, the geological explanation feels incomplete. They point to the uncanny consistency of the equatorial grooves on so many of the spheres, asking if random erosion could be so consistently precise. The very alloy, a nickel-steel blend, is unusually hard and resistant, making the idea of such clean, parallel erosion lines seem less likely. This has led to a more radical line of thought. Could these spheres be evidence of a non-human intelligence that existed on our planet in the deep, dark past? A civilization so ancient that every other trace of it has been ground to dust by the relentless churn of geological time. Or, even more speculatively, might they be artifacts not of Earth at all, but debris left behind by an extraterrestrial visit in our planet's infancy? The Klerksdorp spheres force us into a profound confrontation with deep time. They ask us to decide where we draw the line between the possible and the impossible. Do we trust the slow, patient, and infinitely creative hand of geology to explain every mystery? Or do we allow ourselves to believe that in the vast, silent eons of our planet's history, a story unfolded that we have not yet even begun to imagine? These silent, polished globes of stone seem to have rolled straight out of a dream. Scattered across the Diquis Delta of Costa Rica, hundreds of almost perfectly round stone spheres dot the landscape, some small enough to hold in your hand, others colossal, standing over 2 meters tall and weighing more than 16 tons. They were crafted by a pre-Columbian society, most likely the ancestors of the Boruca people, between the years 500 and 1500 of the Common Era. The sheer effort involved is staggering. Using only stone tools, these ancient artisans hammered and pecked away at massive blocks of gabbro, a hard volcanic rock, patiently grinding them into near-perfect spheres with a precision that feels almost supernatural. The surfaces were smoothed to an incredible finish, a testament to countless hours of painstaking labor. But why? What drove a society without written records to invest such immense energy into creating these geometric marvels? One of the most compelling theories looks to the sky. Researchers have noted that certain groupings of the spheres appear to align with celestial events, pointing toward the rising and setting of the sun or significant stars during solstices. In this view, the spheres were not just art, they were a sophisticated astronomical calendar carved in stone, a permanent observatory that helped a farming culture track the seasons essential for planting and harvest. They transformed the entire landscape into a cosmic map, connecting the people to the rhythms of the universe. Another school of thought sees a more earthly purpose, one of power and status. The largest and most perfectly formed spheres were often placed in prominent positions, near the homes of chiefs or leading figures. They may have been symbols of authority, a physical representation of a leader's influence, their perfection reflecting the order and stability they were meant to provide. The ability to command the labor required to create and move these massive stones would have been a clear demonstration of wealth and social control. A more speculative idea suggests the spheres were symbolic representations of the celestial bodies they were used to track. The larger spheres could be the sun and moon, while smaller ones might represent stars or planets, creating a physical model of the cosmos right here on Earth. This would make them not just tools for observation, but objects of deep spiritual significance, embodying the very gods and forces that govern their world. Whatever their true purpose, the stone spheres of Costa Rica remain a breathtaking enigma. They are a monument to human ingenuity, a silent language written in geometry and stone. They ask us to look at a perfect sphere resting in a jungle clearing and wonder what universe of meaning it held for the hands that shaped it. High above the altar in Spain's Jaena Cathedral, an 11th-century-old tapestry tells a story of divine creation in vibrant wool and linen. The Tapestry of Creation is a stunning Romanesque masterpiece, a complex visual narrative of God forming the world, surrounded by angels, seasons, and celestial bodies. Yet, within this ancient religious artwork, a handful of small, rectangular details have sparked a very modern debate. In several scenes, certain figures, often identified as angels or personifications of virtues, are depicted holding flat, rectangular objects. To a contemporary viewer, the shape and the way these objects are held, with both hands at the bottom, thumbs seemingly resting on the surface, looks uncannily like a person checking a smartphone or a tablet. The figures even appear to be gazing intently at these objects, their posture eerily familiar to anyone who has ridden a bus or sat in a cafe in the 21st century. It is an image that seems to show a piece of our daily technology woven into a medieval vision of the cosmos. This interpretation is a powerful example of how our own cultural lens can reshape the past. Art historians, however, offer a much more grounded explanation rooted in the context of the time. The objects are almost certainly meant to be codices, the bound books that were the pinnacle of information technology in the 11th century. These were precious, rare objects often containing sacred texts, and they were held with reverence and studied with focused attention, exactly as the tapestry depicts. Alternatively, some of the objects could be diptychs, hinged writing tablets made of wood or ivory, or even symbolic shields representing spiritual protection. The artists of the time were not attempting to depict literal, everyday scenes. They were working within a rich tradition of religious symbolism, using established visual shorthand to communicate complex theological ideas to a largely illiterate populace. The tapestry of creation thus becomes a fascinating case study in perception. Our brains are wired to recognize patterns and find familiarity in the unknown, a phenomenon known as pareidolia. We see a face in the moon or a shape in a cloud. In the same way, when we look at this medieval tapestry, our modern minds, saturated with the imagery of handheld screens, immediately make a connection that would have been utterly incomprehensible to the weavers who created it. They were depicting the most advanced information storage device of their age, the bound book. We, looking back, see the most advanced device of our own. This does not mean the tapestry contains a prophecy. It means that human interaction with technology, the act of holding a flat object and absorbing information from it, has a visual similarity that transcends centuries. The true mystery of the tapestry is not about time travelers or lost knowledge, but about the timeless human impulse to communicate and connect, and how that impulse can be misunderstood across the vast gulf of time. It challenges us to look deeper, to see not what we expect, but what the artist actually intended, a message from the medieval world about faith, knowledge, and the divine order of the universe. Gold glitters with secrets in the jungles of Colombia, discovered within ancient Quimbaya tombs, a collection of small, intricate figurines crafted between 1000 and 1600 years ago, have become a focal point of a modern debate. These are not typical representations of gods or animals. Many of the objects possess sleek, aerodynamic bodies, perfectly straight delta wings, and distinct vertical and horizontal stabilizers at the tail. To an untrained eye, they look less like totems and more like detailed models of modern jet aircraft or even the space shuttle. The resemblance is so uncanny it feels intentional. Could a pre-Columbian culture, living over a millennium ago, have possessed a conceptual understanding of flight that mirrors our own? The mainstream archaeological interpretation offers a grounded and elegant explanation. Scholars argue that these are not airplanes at all, but highly stylized representations of the local fauna. The Quimbaya people held a deep reverence for nature, and their art often abstracted animals into geometric forms. A figurine that looks like a jet, they suggest, is actually a stylized bird in flight, its wings swept back and its body streamlined. Others see the form of a fish, with its fins and tail creating the illusion of an aircraft's empennage. The artists were not trying to depict machinery, but to capture the essence of speed and movement found in the natural world. They were abstracting the familiar, not illustrating the impossible. Yet, a chorus of aviation engineers and alternative history enthusiasts presents a compelling counter-argument. When they analyze these gold objects, they do not see the erratic, organic lines of a bird or a fish. They see precise, geometric forms that align perfectly with the principles of aerodynamics. The delta wing configuration is a design optimized for high-speed flight, a concept we only mastered in the 20th century. The placement of the stabilizers is exactly where an aerospace engineer would put them to ensure stability and control. To test this theory, enthusiasts have built scaled-up, weighted replicas of these Quimbaya artifacts fitted with propellers. The results are startling. These models do not simply fall from the sky, they can actually fly, demonstrating stable and graceful gliding capabilities. This practical experiment suggests that the original objects, whether intended or not, embody a shape that is fundamentally airworthy. So we are left with a beautiful and perplexing dichotomy. Are we looking at a case of profound pareidolia, where our modern minds project our own technological world onto the abstract art of an ancient culture? Or do these golden trinkets represent a fleeting glimpse of a different kind of knowledge? There are no records of Quimbaya flight, no legends of sky gods in machines. There is only the silent, gleaming evidence of the objects themselves, their wings forever swept back as if poised for a journey into a sky they were never meant to conquer. From the golden artifacts of Colombia, we travel to the misty mountains of Nepal, where a single stone disc tells a story that is almost too perfect. The Lolodov plate is a dark, circular stone said to have been discovered in the 1940s, and its surface is etched with a stunningly clear spiral pattern that looks exactly like a modern depiction of a spiral galaxy. At the bottom of this cosmic whirlpool stands a small, bipedal figure with an oversized, hairless head, large almond-shaped eyes, and a slender body, a being that mirrors the classic gray alien of contemporary pop culture. The narrative attached to this object is a blockbuster script. It is claimed to be 12,000 years old, an ancient record of extraterrestrial contact left behind by a lost civilization, a permanent portrait of a visitor from the stars. This artifact seems to present the ultimate proof, a prehistoric photograph etched in stone. Yet, when you attempt to trace the Lolodov plate back to a genuine archaeological source, the trail vanishes into thin air. There is no record of its excavation. No reputable museum has ever curated it. It never underwent any form of scientific dating, and its entire history is built on anecdotal stories passed through the fervent circles of the unexplained. The figure of the alien, so familiar to us now, is a product of 20th century science fiction, not ancient art. Ancient artists drawing otherworldly beings tended to create monstrous chimeras, blending animal features in impossible ways, not the sleek, technologically consistent grays that emerged from our own modern anxieties and aspirations. The spiral galaxy itself is another telltale sign. While ancient cultures were brilliant astronomers, their depictions of the cosmos were symbolic, representing constellations or cosmic principles. The Lolodov plate shows a detailed, scientific representation of a specific type of galaxy, a concept that only became part of human understanding in the last century. The plate bears a striking resemblance to the kind of art produced by the New Age movement of the late 20th century, where such symbols of cosmic consciousness and alien contact became popular decorative motifs. So why does this obvious forgery matter in a discussion of genuine mysteries? The Lolodov plate serves as a vital cautionary tale. It demonstrates how our powerful desire for answers can be exploited, and how a compelling story can overshadow the complete lack of factual evidence. In a field already crowded with puzzling artifacts like the Antikythera mechanism or the Voynich manuscript, which are authentic objects with unknown purposes, hoaxes like this plate muddy the waters. They give skeptics an easy reason to dismiss all anomalous finds, and they distract from the hard, meticulous work of investigating the real puzzles of our past. The Lolodov plate is not a window into a lost world. It is a mirror reflecting our own hopes, our own fears, and our own modern mythology projected onto a piece of stone. It challenges us to be more critical, to demand evidence, and to appreciate the profound, genuine mysteries that do not need embellishment to captivate our imagination. Carved deep within the temple of Seti I at Abydos is a panel of hieroglyphs that seems to defy its own era. Among the traditional symbols of gods and pharaohs, clear shapes emerge that look unmistakably like a modern helicopter, a submarine, and even a futuristic aircraft. The lines are too crisp, the forms too familiar. It is an image that feels like a direct message from the past, a warning or a prophecy etched in stone for us to find. How could ancient artists have depicted 20th century machinery with such stunning accuracy? The explanation, however, lies not in prophecy, but in the practical realities of ancient Egyptian construction and a fascinating bit of linguistic recycling. Egyptologists point to the very substance of the temple wall itself. This was not a fresh slab of stone. The section in question was originally carved during the reign of Seti I, celebrating his name and titles. When his son, the great Ramesses II, came to power, he often had his own name and accomplishments inscribed over those of his father. This was a common practice, a form of royal one-upmanship that saved time and resources. The stonemasons would plaster over the old carvings and chisel the new hieroglyphs right on top. Centuries later, that plaster has fallen away. What remains is a palimpsest, a fusion of two separate sets of inscriptions carved at different times. The overlapping lines and shapes create entirely new, unintended images. The so-called helicopter is not a single object but a composite. The rotor is part of an older carving, perhaps the arm and scepter of a god, that now intersects with the rounded body of a hieroglyphic basket and the long, horizontal line of a royal cartouche from the newer inscription. The submarine and aircraft are born from the same process, accidental collages formed by the erosion of time and the politics of pharaohs. This is also a story of phonetic wordplay. Ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs were not just pictures, they were a complex writing system where symbols could represent sounds. The overlapping carvings often create new combinations of these sound signs. The visual coincidence that creates the helicopter shape also creates a nonsensical but pronounceable sequence of phonetic characters. It is a grammatical error frozen in stone, not a blueprint for a flying machine. The orthodox view sees this panel as a testament to human pattern recognition. Our brains are wired to find familiar shapes in random lines, and in the jumble of ancient text, we find the technology that defines our own world. The Abydos helicopter does not show us that the Egyptians had aircraft. It shows us how desperately we want to see ourselves in the past. 7,000 years ago, in the fertile plains of Mesopotamia, the Ubaid culture was shaping the foundations of civilization. From their ancient settlements, archaeologists have unearthed a collection of terracotta figurines that are deeply unsettling to the modern eye. These artifacts depict humanoid forms, but they are not entirely human. Their heads are disturbingly elongated, often cone-shaped or completely reptilian. Their faces feature sharp, almond-shaped eyes that slant upwards, and their bodies are slender, sometimes adorned with scales or posed in a way that suggests a slithering, lizard-like posture. A number of the statues clearly show female figures nursing what appear to be infant reptilian creatures. These are the Ubaid lizardmen, and they present a mystery not of technology but of belief. What vision or what memory compelled these ancient artists to create such bizarre and consistent imagery? Mainstream archaeology offers a deeply symbolic interpretation. One leading theory suggests these figurines represent priest-shamans engaged in ritual transformation. In many ancient cultures, spiritual leaders would wear elaborate masks and costumes during ceremonies to take on the attributes of powerful animals, believing they could channel the creature's strength or wisdom. The reptilian features could symbolize regeneration and primordial power, much like a snake shedding its skin. The elongated heads might depict the practice of ritual head binding, a form of body modification used by various cultures to signify high social or religious status. In this view, the Ubaid lizardmen are not literal portraits, but symbolic representations of a spiritual elite connecting humanity to the ancient, powerful forces of the natural world. Yet, the striking consistency and specific nature of the figures have fueled a far more speculative theory. Proponents of the ancient astronaut hypothesis look at these figurines and see something else entirely. They ask a provocative question: what if these are not symbolic costumes, but accurate depictions of a non-human species that once interacted with humanity? The sleek, reptilian features, the large, perceptive eyes, and the elongated craniums are all traits commonly associated with extraterrestrial greys in modern pop culture. Could the Ubaid culture have been documenting a real, biological reality, perhaps a race of alien beings they viewed as gods or creators? The statues of mothers nursing hybrid young are pointed to as potential evidence of an interbreeding program, a story that echoes strangely across millennia. So we are left with two vastly different visions of the past. Are we looking at a profound spiritual metaphor, a culture's artistic attempt to bridge the gap between humanity and the raw, untamed power of nature? Or do these fired clay figures hold a much more literal and far more startling truth about our origins? the U-bayed lizardmen do not offer any easy answers. They simply sit in their museum cases, their almond eyes staring out across 7,000 years, silently challenging us to decide what is symbol and what is memory. A different kind of knowledge, not of stars or machines, but of life itself, is etched into a small, dark stone from Colombia. Known as the genetic disc, this black lithic object is about the size of a large coaster and is carved with scenes of stunning biological detail. On its surface, you can follow the entire human life cycle from conception to birth. There are clear, unambiguous carvings of sperm fertilizing an egg, followed by sequential stages of a developing fetus, showing it curled in the womb and culminating in a detailed depiction of a newborn baby. The precision of the biological forms is what makes this artifact so deeply controversial. This is not stylized or symbolic art. It is a diagrammatic representation of embryology that required a microscopic understanding of human reproduction, knowledge that science did not formally acquire until the 19th and 20th centuries. How could a pre-Columbian culture have possessed such an intimate and accurate view of the beginnings of life? The implications are staggering, suggesting a lost civilization with advanced medical and scientific insight. Yet, this is where the mystery collides with a stark and probable reality. The genetic disc is not like other artifacts found in controlled archaeological digs. It has no provenance, no documented excavation site, and no verifiable context tying it to an ancient culture. It appeared on the antiquities market, a private find with a story that cannot be independently verified. The material itself, a hard black stone, has been identified by some geologists as lyddite, a material that is incredibly difficult to carve with the precision seen on the disc, especially using the primitive stone or copper tools available thousands of years ago. The clean, machined-like lines and the depth of the carvings suggest the use of modern rotary tools, not the patient pecking and grinding of an ancient artisan. The most likely explanation is that the genetic disc is a modern creation, a clever and sophisticated forgery designed specifically to appeal to the growing market of alternative history enthusiasts. A carver with a basic biology textbook could have produced these images, using modern equipment to achieve the crisp, clean lines, and then artificially aging the stone to give it a patina of antiquity. The disc tells a story we are primed to believe, a story of lost knowledge and forgotten science, making it a powerful and commercially viable object. So we are left with a painful but necessary question. Are we looking at a miraculous window into a forgotten science, or are we looking at a mirror that reflects our own desires back at us? The genetic disc serves as a final, sobering lesson in a journey filled with wonders. It reminds us that the most seductive mysteries are not always the oldest, but sometimes simply the ones we wish were true. Buried in a tomb sealed centuries before European ships ever reached the Americas, a small terracotta head stares out with the face of a stranger. Unearthed in the 1930s at the Toltec site of Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca in Mexico, this artifact was found in a burial context securely dated to between the 12th and 14th centuries. The figure is unmistakably foreign. It sports a distinct full beard, a facial feature rarely depicted by indigenous Mesoamerican artists, and its style is pure classical Roman, complete with a characteristic hairstyle and a peaked cap known as a pileus. This is not a vague resemblance. It looks exactly like a Roman artifact from the 2nd or 3rd century, a world and an ocean away. How could a piece of ancient Rome end up in a sealed grave in pre-Columbian Mexico? The implications are as profound as they are controversial, suggesting direct transatlantic contact between the Old World and the New, more than half a millennium before Columbus. The most compelling evidence comes from science. In the 1990s, researchers subjected the head to thermoluminescence dating, a technique that measures the last time an object was heated, such as in a kiln. The results were definitive. The head was fired between the years 800 and 1200 of the Common Era. firmly placing it in the pre-Hispanic period and seemingly confirming its status as a genuine out-of-place artifact. This single data point fuels an extraordinary narrative. Could a Roman vessel, perhaps blown wildly off course, have made the perilous crossing? Might survivors of such a voyage have integrated into local societies, leaving this one poignant relic of their homeland behind? Yet, the mystery is not so easily solved. Skeptics present a powerful counter-argument centered on the archaeological context itself. While the burial was intact, the site of Tekaxitl was disturbed by colonial-era activities. They argue that the head could be a genuine Roman artifact, but one that was introduced much later. A Spanish colonist or a later collector could have owned the figurine as a curiosity, and through some accident, it could have fallen into an older layer, becoming mixed with the pre-Columbian remains. This would make it an intrusion, an object out of time, but not a true out-of-place artifact in the historical sense. Its presence would be a fascinating coincidence of archaeology, not proof of ancient voyages. There is a third, more nuanced possibility. Could the head be a local creation that, through a staggering coincidence, just happens to look exactly like Roman art? Artists across the globe have often developed similar styles independently, yet the specificity of the beard and the pileus cap make this a statistical long shot of incredible proportions. The Tekaxitl head remains a perfect storm of conflicting evidence. It has scientific dating on its side, but its context will always carry a shadow of doubt. It forces us to hold two opposing truths in our minds at once. We have an object that science says is ancient, yet its very existence challenges the historical narrative we thought was solid. Is it a smoking gun for pre-Columbian contact, or merely an archaeological prank played by time itself? The head offers no further answers, its Roman features forever frozen in silent, enigmatic judgment. These 25 artifacts form a chorus of whispers from the shadows of history, each one a challenge to the neat, linear story we tell ourselves about human progress. From the intricate gears of the Antikythera, a mechanism, to the silent, staring eyes of the Ubaid lizardmen, they force us to confront a startling possibility. Our past may not be a simple upward climb from primitive to advanced, but a landscape of scattered peaks and forgotten valleys, where genius flickered and was lost, only to be rediscovered centuries later. This collective enigma suggests that the timeline of human achievement is far more complex and mysterious than any textbook could ever contain. Yet this journey also teaches a vital lesson in discernment. For every genuine puzzle like the Voynich manuscript, there is a cautionary tale like the Dropa stones, reminding us that our desire for answers can sometimes create mysteries where none exist. The difference between a world-changing anomaly and a clever hoax often lies in the rigorous, unglamorous work of scientific inquiry. It is the patience of the geologist who understands how quickly a concretion can form, and the skepticism of the historian who demands verifiable context. These tools are our compass in a sea of speculation, guiding us toward the truly profound questions that still await an answer. So where does this leave us? It leaves us at the beginning of a much larger adventure, with eyes wide open to the wonders and deceptions of the ancient world. The conversation does not end here. We want to hear from you. What historical mystery captures your imagination? Share your own favorite enigma in the comments below. And if you are ready for more journeys into the unknown, subscribe to keep exploring the secrets hidden just beneath the surface of our world.